Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Ben Tarassoli. He's the founder and CEO at Propella Electric Bikes. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing is really cool and innovative. And, you know, I think I love having people on the show that are actually doing this kind of stuff and especially building kind of a physical product. So yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be on your show.
Yeah. So maybe let's start off with kind of getting to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I was born in Tehran, Iran, actually.
Okay.
I moved to the United States around the age of 14. Although I should mention it wasn't my first time coming to the U.S. My dad is a doctor, and he was always affiliated with research at different hospitals, and visiting U.S. was really a routine.
Okay.
And it was really around 2002 that we decided to finally move to the U.S. And it was when I started high school here in Bellevue, Washington.
Okay.
And ever since I've been here. So I guess I sort of grew up in the U.S. for the most part. But before that, I was overseas.
Sure. No, that's great.
Yeah, and really it was sort of starting fresh, starting something completely new at around age of 14. And I had a lot of goals, a lot of ambition on what to do with my life when I came to the U.S. I was very excited. And after finishing high school, I attended University of Washington.
Okay. What did you take there?
I studied civil and environmental engineering.
Okay. And what made you want to take engineering?
Engineering was always something in me. I was really born with it. And I always knew from a very young age that something technical in the area of engineering was really the way to go for me. I had a pretty mixed interest in different engineering disciplines. I was, debating between mechanical engineering and civil or aeronautics, and decided to go with civil engineering and focus on structural engineering. Okay. And to be honest, a lot of close friends from childhood and family members were actually a little bit shocked that I did that. They always thought I was more of this mechanical engineer guy, and that I guess kind of explains how I'm working on this electric bike and product. Mechanical engineering would logically make more sense. And I did, in fact, get into mechanical engineering and civil engineering. But I was, interested by the focus of structural engineering, within civil engineering, and how it was very well defined. And it was a good mixture of engineering and, I should mention, arts. Sure. And one thing I didn't mention, I can go in a long conversation about my other interests and how it led to Propella.
Sure.
But as a side note, engineering wasn't the only thing I was interested in, obviously. I had a great passion for, design and art and music as a very young age.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and to me, working with buildings, civil engineering and buildings was a mixture of art and science. And my interest in architecture and engineering could kind of blend into that. That was really one reason I went into civil engineering. And then there's other reasons. When you're in a big university, you kind of have to make decisions really fast, and there's not a whole lot of time to go back and forth. So
right.
I finished that and and that was around 2011 when I graduated. And uh, as you can tell, not the best time economically to
Sure.
grad. And so I got my bachelor's in civil engineering and applied to jobs um, around Seattle area. It was not easy to find a position that I studied for.
Okay.
What happened was I encountered this job at a tunnel project in Seattle. It's called the Bertha Tunnel. It's one of
Okay.
the largest tunnels in the country or the world, I believe. And it was, to be honest, not exactly what I studied for. But I went ahead and took the job because the economy was not so great, and ended up working there as a my position was, a sort of a technician slash engineer, and we had to go out and install instruments and measure things, and I did that for a while, for about 1 year, and really decided that it was not what I wanted to do in the long term. So that's when I kind of started having thoughts about starting something that I'm passionate about, starting my own business, and really going into something that I can be myself and put in my creativity and all my interests into. And that's sort of how Propeller got started.
Okay. So, what made you decide to start an electric bike company?
Electric bike was really a perfect platform for me to apply my interests in.
Okay.
I feel like, and it wasn't when I first heard about it, and it wasn't something that was completely new because at the end of the day, when you look at the big picture, it's a bike with electric system on it. It's not like this whole new invention. It makes sense. A battery and a motor is something that's been out there, and so I didn't get that feeling where this is something I've never seen before, but the feeling that I had was more entrepreneurial, and it's something that I felt like I want to be part of. I want
Okay.
to be part of the game, and it was around around the same time, just after graduating from college, during the recessions, that I kind of encountered these YouTube videos about electric bikes and electric bike review products, and I kind of felt that it was an emerging industry. And as I mentioned, having an interest in engineering, mechanical, electrical, and all of that, plus I should mention I was always into bikes as a kid. I was not, a hardcore cyclist, a pro cyclist, but always had many bikes, mountain bikes, road bikes as a kid, playing around the house, neighborhood. So being passionate about bikes, engineering, that was really the best blend of things for me. I could really never stop learning about it. I kept researching it, Googling things. And that's when I found out that I had this natural desire to find out more, study the motor, study the batteries. And again, it goes a lot back to my history and interest. Um, I didn't mention that, as a kid, I was always playing around with my toys and breaking them and building new things out of them. So I just naturally had this pretty good above average knowledge of electrical engineering.
Okay.
A lot of people ask me how. They said, how do you didn't study electrical engineering, and how do you know about voltage and amp power, and how does this come so naturally to you? To answer that question, it was really because of my curiosity as a child, and my interest in science in general. I was always playing around with transformers and motors and things like that. So it just clicked. When I
That's
learned about
awesome.
electric bikes, it just clicked, and it was so natural. People always say follow your passion. It's very true, but there's more to it. It was more like there's this platform that's new, but I already know so much about it. Like I didn't have to research so much about how the motor works. I already knew that. It was more about how the market works, how this business side works. So that's what got me interested in it. And I should mention that to be honest, did not have a whole lot of intention about starting my own business.
Okay.
I was not afraid of it or not trying to stay away from it, but it was not my priority. It was not my priority to study business or get an MBA. I was more focused on sciences and then the product and the physical side of the product. So I was interested in the market um, when I discovered about it, and again, it was sort of this transition period in my life, just graduating after college, trying to find out exactly what you want to do, who you are, who you want to be, and it was, I think it happened at a very interesting time that I felt really connected with electric bikes, and that's when I started to actually build my own electric bike.
Okay, so were you still working then full time while you started building your own bike?
Yes,
Okay,
and this was actually during that um, job that I mentioned for the tunnel project in Seattle.
right.
I believe it was around 2012. I had a full-time job, and at the end of the job, I was looking forward to come back home or go to my parents' garage to see the progress on my electric bike. It was literally buying an electric bike kit from other sources, a few from China, a few from here, and installing it on my own bike. That was really
Interesting.
the first, even before a prototype, and it was before thinking about starting a business. And I always had in the back of my mind, reading books, and I had this entrepreneurial side. I was learning more about it, but it was so fresh to the whole world of entrepreneurship that I feel like it was a good thing to be so focused on product and the main picture rather than making money out of this. So I was just in my own world and figuring out electric bikes. Like, what is this? How does this motor work? I've never felt an acceleration on a bike before, and I wanted to try it. And I should mention that I did go to a store in Seattle to actually get a feel of what an electric bike is. And I guess that was the spark. I went
Okay,
there, tried one of these electric bikes that was already out there. I mean, we all know Propella is not the first electric bike,
sure.
but I had a lot of thoughts in my head. So I went there and I tried it. And again, during the same time period, with 2011, 12. And I tried, I just felt, just had this, aha moment that, just an acceleration on a bike. It's sort of like a Tesla of bikes. And I just started getting all these ideas of how amazing this thing is. It helps you on hills. You can have all these technology in it, like a battery. And I just tried it, and I just went back to my parents' garage and started building this electric kit on my road bike. And
That's
that's when the
interesting.
first one started. Yeah. And that's when I officially had an electric bike for myself, testing it around and things like that.
Sure. So for people that don't understand kind of what an electric bike gives you compared to, just like a regular bike, do you want to maybe just kind of cover that quickly?
Sure, absolutely. A point of an electric bike is to assist you, help you on hills or long commutes.
Okay.
Because biking, we all know, is, especially when it's used for commuting, it's not the easiest
Sure.
task. It can be hard. Biking can be hard, especially when you hit hills. When you look at it from the physics point of view, when you're climbing hills, you're burning a lot more calories, like exponentially more, because of simply because of gravity pulling you back. So that's really where the need comes from. It's purely to help you on hills. And with electric bikes, you have a lot of options on how to use it and when to use it. You can use the electric assist with pedaling or without pedaling.
Okay.
But that's really the main point of it. It's an electric assist motor installed on a bicycle.
Got you. Okay. No, that makes total sense. So you turned your road bike into an electric bike. You were
Hmm.
you were playing around with it for a while.
Right.
Then what happened? You were like, this I could build a better one? Like walk me through kind of the next step. What happened?
Sure. Yeah, and that's where things got a little interesting for me because I didn't exactly have the intention of um, building my bike to sell it commercially, but I just wanted to experiment. And the electric bike kit, the components, the motor that I purchased, were so bad, were so
Okay.
low quality that did not meet my standards at all, from purely from a technical point of view. And let's not even talk about how the design and the way it looks, and all, even just from
Sure.
per, engineering point of view. It was breaking down, and I even paid a lot of, I paid over $1,000 for um, just the kit.
Okay,
And
wow.
I'm not mentioning any names, what the brand is or anything,
Sure.
but it was breaking down. It was so heavy. It added 20 pounds, 15 to
Wow.
20 pounds to my bike. And it was great being able to pedal and go fast and climb hills. And that part of it I like, the concept of an electric bike. And I saw a lot of potential in it. However, there was a lot of things that I didn't like about it, and I just felt like, why should a customer or a person like me sacrifice in so many things in order to gain one thing? That's not really, value proposition. There's something wrong there. Um, so, still focusing on the technical side and engineering side, really it was the weight, the extra weight, and the complexity
Okay.
that bothered me. It almost made me, I don't want to say quit, but just forget about electric bikes.
Really?
I
Wow. No,
had,
I love that though, right? Like,
that anger. Yeah, it sort of made things interesting, and
totally.
that I had to call their customer service, and they weren't able to do anything. And I remember it was complicated. It was actually high tech. I should mention the electric bike kit that I had was pretty high tech, and it was able to connect to your phone. But as you can imagine, sometimes it didn't connect, sometimes
Sure.
it did. All these malfunctions. Um, and that's when I decided to not just purchase a bike, electric bike or an electric bike kit, but to create one,
Okay.
to something that met my standards, or at least some of my standards. And being an engineer and being involved with the world of engineering, I knew that it was more than just sketching things on paper and just dreaming about it. I knew it would take money, it would take steps. So obviously, even up until today, I'll be honest, I still have this desire to create the best electric bike out there, and a lot of work to do. But at least I could get closer to what I
Sure.
wanted.
That's great.
And like I mentioned, it was one was lightweight, the other was simplicity, something that made my standards. And I should kind of change gears a little bit to the other side of my, I should say, personality,
Okay.
and bring a few extra elements to the story. And that is, like I mentioned, my interest in music, and design, and arts. I was always, having had this blend of interests as a kid, as I mentioned, and having for example, one of the uh, I have a lot of respect and interest in Apple products,
Sure.
and products out there that are not just engineering, but a whole package experience.
Right.
I value things like Dyson products and
Sure.
and Tesla. It may sound a little cliche. I mean, they are great products out there. Everybody knows about them, but there's a reason why they're great, because of
Totally.
their full package experience.
Yep.
And one of those customers that buys an Apple product and appreciates it every moment. I look at the details. For example, I've never had an iPhone case. I
Okay.
always have my iPhone without any case, and people ask me, "You're crazy. You need to have a case to protect it." And I tell them, they spend a lot of hours and money designing all these little details. And not only your phone is engineered to, uh, you know, take impact when you drop it on a floor or anything, but it's the little details I design, and it just fits your hand perfectly, and you should appreciate that.
Sure.
So
No, I
it
get
was,
that. Yep.
yeah. Well, of course, that comes with a sacrifice. Yes, you could drop your phone and break it, but really having the eye for detail and having high standards on design, I also wanted to bring that in to my electric bike. So not only a good performing bike, a lightweight, simple, but also aesthetically pleasing.
Sure. Because I like to be fair, at least the electric bikes that I've seen, they're kind of ugly for lack of a better term,
Yeah,
really, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah. So
And
I
that's
get that.
perfect. Yeah, and that's the other element actually. That's why I wanted to change gears, because aesthetics was always in my mind.
Sure.
Create any products, and like I mentioned, I'm a musician. I've always, been producing and mixing and my tracks and electronic music, playing around with piano.
Sure.
I've never had a career in music, but I've always had my hands on musical instruments, listening to music all the time. So art is always in my head. So I guess
Sure.
we could say that, the right brain, left brain thing that people talk about, always mixing the two. So
That's
that was my
great.
priority, to create this full package, and not to mention not just a product but a brand. And I
Sure.
remember I was spending days finding the right name for Propella,
Okay.
and so it just clicked when I had
So how did
Propella.
you come up with it then?
That's a very common question, and
Sure.
it's, to be honest, I there was no methodology, no procedure that I followed. I do remember this period that I was searching and just writing things down. And one thing I remember was, um, when Propeller came, it just clicked. It
Okay.
it makes sense
Do you
logically.
remember exactly the moment that it came to you, or not really?
I don't. I
Really?
do have it on
Interesting.
paper, and it's funny when you look at my paper. There's all these names, and then the last one is Propeller, and then there's an exclamation mark, and there's
Really?
nothing else.
That's great, man. I love those stories though, right?
It's just the last one, and it's just boom. There's a
Sure.
cloud next to it. Um, it did come from a little bit of logic, a propeller, or
Sure.
something that propels you. I believe that's how it came to me, and I did appreciate the fact that it was very rare in Google. I mean,
Sure.
you find, what's your first step when you have a name? You kind of want to do a Google search. Of
Totally.
course, it's a lot more involved. Right now, we have a trademark on it and everything, but I was glad that it wasn't a whole lot of things called Propeller out there, and it was this unique name that made sense for our bike, and I was really excited to move forward with it. And it also kind of explain what the brand is about. It does have a logical side, propelling you,
Sure.
but it also have this illogical side where it's just that A at the end just kind of gives it that artistic touch, that poetic one that's kind of pleasing to say, propeller. So
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting. Now that you like explain the whole vision and kind of story behind it, like I love the design of the bike, and I love kind of the black and then the bright colors, and then you're right, like it totally, the name fits kind of your personality, where you're kind of obviously like the engineering kind of side and then the creative side, and even you can tell there's like a music influence in the design, if that's a thing, right? But like to me at least, I've kind of been a musician my whole life too. So I get the inspiration there, right? Like from all those angles. And I love how you basically put everything that you're passionate about into a physical product.
absolutely, and I'm really happy that you like the design and it clicks, because when I hear that from customers or product reviewers or interviews like yourself, that really it's a really rewarding
Yeah,
feeling.
it's
It's
beautiful.
like you're communicating indirectly, and it just works. It clicks. And early on, when I was deciding on the branding, personality, the identity, and things like that, I knew it was a risk. I knew it was all in my head,
Sure.
but you have this wall in between you, and that wall is, the product that you're creating, the brand, and then your audience. Uh, so a few months later, or right after the campaign, or I should say right now, um, when I hear that, it's really rewarding. I get this feeling that it's working. You know, it's
Totally.
it's still a lot of work to do, but it's connect. There's a connection there.
I think there's not that many products that you can just look at and know the brand right away, right? Like obviously
Right.
Apple does that, and
Mhm.
there's cars and stuff that do that. But like if you take all the products in the spectrum, there's not that many that if you just look at it right away, you're like, that's that brand for sure. I know that, right? And I
Right.
think you captured.
It's great to hear that, and that is one of my priorities. With
Sure.
Propeller.
That's great.
Obviously, the product is important, but the brand, to give the brand a very solid identity,
Sure.
and that way it just drives the direction of
Which is
the company.
extremely hard to do these days.
Very hard. Yes. Very
Like,
difficult. It's almost like having a child, and you have to um, dictate what his or her personality should be. But do you want to do that? There's also the society, which is the environment, or I should say the customer. So it's a blend of the external world and the internal world. But you, as a parent, as a father or mother, you have some hopes. You
sure.
really want to have things to go in a certain direction, but it's very hard. Like you said, it's back and forth process. You have to test the market, come back, reiterate. And I'll mention I have very certain bullet points on what I want to accomplish with Propeller, but
Sure.
still working on it. There's still a research on what we want to be. Some things are still blurry. You're still discovering yourself. And I think it's great to be transparent. It's great to
I love
say,
that.
"Oh,
Yeah.
I'm still growing. I'm still figuring out who I am." And just like myself in my, in my mid 20s,
Sure.
still exploring things out there. And right now, I'm happy to have a platform, this brand, to be able to put in my personality, and of course my team, and also a blend of customers' personality. So it's a platform that's just starting and growing, and very excited about it.
Sure. No. So I'm curious then. You obviously, we kind of covered, you bought a bunch of parts, you put together a bike, you ordered some more parts, and
Hmm.
then walk me through kind of the first prototype of a propeller.
Sure. Yeah, I was in the bike world. I'm a very big fan of a type of bicycle called a fixie.
Okay.
A lot of people are already familiar with it, or some are not. A fixie uh, is literally has fixed gear. Like the
Sure.
crank is fixed with the rear wheel gear. So as you turn the pedal, the rear wheel spins with the same, not the same rotation, but there's no freewheel. It's so simple. The idea comes from simplicity. That's the type of bike that's been around for a while, and it really is very lightweight and the most minimal bike you can get out there. And it doesn't even have brakes. It's so
Really?
minimal
Wow.
that the way you brake is literally you pedal backwards because it's fixed. You don't have the freewheel to spin. You're able to slow down or literally lock the wheel with your legs. And of
Interesting.
course, a fixie is an extreme version. It's too extreme on simplicity. A little bit more mellow version of that is a single speed bike.
Okay.
So you have the front gear and the rear wheel. You don't have gears in the back to change. And I was just fascinated by single speed bikes. I've had purchased a few from different brands out there, and I decided to. So I love the simplicity of it, the lightweight, and the way also, at least to me, simplicity brings beauty. Maybe that's not true for other people, but when I see a single speed bike, it's not trying so hard to be beautiful, but it is. It's just so simple.
Sure.
It's just two wheels, and especially when you mix them with these deep dish rims and colorful rims and a matte black frame, and you can get a pretty beautiful bike.
Totally.
And so I decided to create the electric version of that, actually.
Okay.
That's
Interesting.
when the marketing comes in. So I knew that I wanted to have my own electric bike, and I had a pretty good vision on what the technical side is, and that wasn't the hard part actually. I knew I wanted a small motor and a small battery to make it minimal and
Sure.
lightweight. But on the marketing side and the way it looks and the audience and things get a little complicated there. So I decided to focus on a fixie style or a single speed electric bike. And that sort of clicked too because I thought, wait a minute, a single speed bike has, one disadvantage. It's single speed. It doesn't have gears, so you may have trouble climbing hills.
Sure.
But there's still a lot of riders, even in San Francisco, with these extreme hills.
Totally.
These are the true diehard fixie fans and single speed fans. They are willing to sacrifice these hills because of the simplicity of their bike. It's very reliable. It
Sure.
doesn't break down a lightweight. I thought, having this minimal electric assist on a single speed bike is kind of interesting, at least to me personally. So um, that's when I had this philosophy, the minimalism. That's where minimalism came in, and wanted to create this minimalist electric bike. And this, so when you have, again, having a passion for brands, successful brands, and what comes to your mind is philosophy.
Sure.
You have to have a philosophy, and you have to say no to a few things. You have to have rules. At least that's what I was learning from all these books and my interests and just observing great brands. So I decided to put a philosophy on top of the page, and that is minimalism. So in order to work on any part of the design, or I should say any part of the business, I had to somehow go back to the philosophy and ask, is this the right thing to do or not? So
Interesting.
so when it comes to, you could, have different departments in the
Sure.
department of aesthetics or industrial design and the way bike looks. So we can't just throw in a few things and call it an electric bike. So with the minimalism approach, I had to look for a very minimal electric bike kit, a very minimal motor, battery, and computer system, a controller. By the way, when it comes to electric bikes, it comes down to three components. It's pretty simple when you
Okay.
look at the big picture. Is the motor, obviously,
Sure.
something that propels you. The battery, where we charge and stores the energy,
Sure.
and controller. The controller is the third component that's not talked about a lot, but it's really the electronics, the computer that regulate the voltage and measure things. Because it's not as simple as just a motor and a battery. It has to be some. So that's really what it comes down to. So I had to look for these components from different suppliers that were not standard actually, and
Okay.
that's when I noticed that um, every supplier I searched with, some on Alibaba, some on local, and they all had these gigantic motors and batteries that was well established in the market. And it's funny, the battery that I wanted was so minimal and small that made them think that I was looking for this weird electric bike, and they laughed at it. They said all these customers are asking for more power and more battery capacity, and you're asking for less. And that's why I had a hard time find what I wanted to get for my bike. And eventually I had to custom order one. Took a while.
Okay.
I had to put in my more money, finally get it from overseas, and finally there it is in the package. There's this small um, battery and a small motor that I was waiting for months.
Sure.
And I have to be so specific with, even though it was the first prototype, I was very picky with the color. I wanted it to be matte black.
Sure.
I gave my supplier a lot of headache.
Did you
They
go over there and meet them, or you just did this all kind of remote?
all kind of remote.
Okay,
All,
interesting.
yeah. And, with my tough schedule, it was tough. It would have been easy, I'll be honest, to go there and meet them. But I didn't see the need for it,
Okay.
just the prototype. And things were going in the right direction. I was able to find that first prototype. And then, so I had this bike that was a single speed bike. Of course, I kind of custom ordered that one too. I wanted matte black rims, matte black frame, everything nice and clean. And then when the electrical components arrived, that was just a very special day. I
Sure.
just go to the garage uh, and I just have to fast forward, I guess, days of running into problems. The spokes didn't match the length of the motor. I,
Oh
you
wow.
spokes that attach the ram to the motor. I just realized, well, I have to recalculate the length. I literally had to like draw these diagrams and figure out this new length. And then I did that. I cut them. It doesn't work. I have to take it to a bike shop. A lot of hustling and hard work.
Trial and
I,
error, it sounds like.
oh yeah, it was difficult. And I took it to a few bike shops, and they looked at this and they said, "What is this? We don't know how to. We've never had this motor." All these parts that I wanted was really hard to find. But eventually, I believe after 2, 3 weeks, it's there. The electric components are connected to this battery, and it just that's. And then I fix things and I assemble, and I step back and I look at it, and I haven't even tried it yet, and I get this feeling that it's that whole package experience, and
Okay,
that's
interesting.
what
That's
put in
awesome.
a logo, Pirelli logo on the battery and the frame. As things kind of glued together, and then at that point, I didn't even care so much about how it would feel and the motor noise and the power. I just felt like this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to
Interesting.
continue. Yeah, that
Okay.
was the first prototype. Yeah.
So, were you still working at this point, or had you quit your job by then?
No, not by then. All of the story I had been working
Okay.
for self-funding
Sure.
everything, and this was all full-time employment. And it was very doable. It was challenging, obviously, but it wasn't that demanding. Uh,
Sure.
Before running a campaign, it was more like a hobby. Go to parents' garage whenever you have time. I did
Sure.
have a schedule, but it wasn't that strict. It was more of you're more in the invention world. more laid back than now, definitely.
Sure. Okay, so you get this thing assembled, you're looking at it, you like what you see. I'm assuming you shortly thereafter took it for a spin?
Yes, that's correct. And I
Okay.
do not remember exactly what month it was, but it must have been challenging in Seattle with the rain. I believe it was rainy out there, and I
Sure.
go out and try it, and guess what? It performs a lot better than the other electric bike kits that I had purchased,
Really? Wow,
and
that's
mainly due to
awesome.
the simplicity. Yeah, and I was very happy, and that's when I thought the simplicity and minimalism is just a great philosophy to have to help you in all kinds of areas in product design, not just aesthetics, but reliability, engineering,
Sure.
and having a few parts but good quality parts is really my philosophy. And I was happy that I had an electric bike that worked, and I had so few components that even if one of them failed, I could easily troubleshoot.
Right.
The motor was small, and it was the right motor. It was compact. It had these gears inside them that make it even lighter and more efficient. And I knew I had a lot of work to do, but it was a great feeling. It was a successful first prototype that performed well and looked great.
Okay, so you have this first prototype. What made, or like, how did you go about, did you build a second prototype, or walk me through kind of the next steps of this?
I did.
Okay.
I So the first prototype was, I believe, during the same time when I started a Facebook page for the company and
Okay.
try to get it out there.
Do you still have the first prototype, just out of curiosity?
I do actually.
Okay, awesome. That's great.
It should be in the museum, hopefully one
That's
day.
right. That's right. That's okay. So,
And first prototype was very clean and good looking, but so that's when there's a lot of work. Yeah, I started showing this to a few people, a few friends, and a few bike experts. Obviously, you get mixed interests and
sure.
feelings and opinions, but that's when I sort of, and I even showed it to a few bike shops,
Okay.
and they really liked the design. But that's when I was entering the business world more, the customer and what the customer wants, and that's when I realized that this, no matter how strict you are with your own opinions, you still have to, pay attention to the market.
Very
Uh,
much. That's really good advice.
yeah, and I don't know what percentage, it depends on how much ego you have with your brand, and
Sure.
it really depends on a lot of things. But at some point, you need to pay attention to that, and that's when I understood that there's a lot of practicality into electric bikes too. Obviously has to be very safe, has to be reliable. So, and on the bike parts, not just electric parts, but the bike parts, they have to perform
Sure.
well. So that's when I started to build a second one that was more practical,
Okay.
lighter tires, disc brakes, and it was hard. Then I was getting away from minimalism. So then I was adding these things that customers wanted. And it's being in Seattle with the rain. Um, a lot of customers request fenders, or mud guards.
Sure.
So adding all these would add weight and things like that. So it was always this challenge to create a product that you like and also the customer likes. Yeah, and then that's when I entered. That's when I focused on social media as well. We started an Instagram page, and was shifting more towards marketing, and obviously continue my conversation and with the suppliers and people on the technical side. And that's when things started to click. Started to, and also with motivation from my friends and to really get it out there. And that's when we thought about the idea of crowdfunding.
Okay. So you went crowdfunding, and that was to build like version 1.0.
Yes.
Okay.
At the time, it was just, propeller electric bike, um, and not a 1.0, 2.0, but really it was, I should mention, when I was contacted by a very large scale supplier, overseas supplier, who approached us on Twitter, I believe.
Okay.
And we started having conversations, and they told me that they really like my design, and they're confident that they can build it for us. And,
Interesting.
mhm. and I should mention, yeah, my whole business plan was to really assemble these electric part kits on a bike that was already out there and then distribute it and sell it.
Right.
But things changed when the supplier stepped in.
Oh,
And
interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
he could build the whole thing for me. And I had these strict requirements, and I was suspicious because it's so hard to communicate. I have these, it's all about the little details. And the only way I could quality control all of that was to purchase a bike and then install these electric components and distribute them.
Sure.
I was even thinking about not even rebranding them and saying, a Propeller electric components assembled by Propeller on this brand, on this XYZ brand. But then when the supplier came in so fast forwarding, and after months of talk on Skype and discussions and phone calls, requirements, then they built me a full sample.
Okay.
That they shipped to Seattle, and I got it out of the box.
Okay.
And again, another aha moment. That's when I had confidence on selling this. That's when I had confidence on a safe, secure, and a good-looking, good-performing bike that I can distribute. That's when I had the idea of crowdfunding, and I gained the confidence, really. Before that, it was just a garage-made prototype that had a lot of work to do. But when you're backed with a very successful supplier, you gain a lot of confidence.
Sure. That's great. So walk me through the crowdfunding. So you have this supplier, you can get them these bikes done. You decide to go crowdfunding. Walk me through kind of that campaign.
Sure. I obviously knew about crowdfunding platforms before.
Sure.
And I thought it was a great fit. I thought this is the way to go. And in fact, when I was learning about crowdfunding, I always wished that I had this project that I could throw in crowdfunding. I never did, but finally there it is. So I had the product, and the crowdfunding campaign is there. So I contact Indiegogo and try to learn more about their service, and I thought it was a great fit. And they've had experience with other similar products before. And the challenge was not having a whole lot of marketing behind it.
Sure.
And that was really the challenging part. But I decided to learn more about crowdfunding and really emphasize more on our social media, try to gain more followers and get engagements. And I also decided to bring in another one of my strengths, and just in art and design, and which was photography.
Okay.
I was pretty good at photography and had this good knowledge of photography. I had a pretty decent camera, and ended up taking pretty decent photos that people really liked on social media, and ended up helping us a lot on the campaign. And that also blended in well with the brand, having these high standards on aesthetics and design.
Sure.
It just helped to have these great photos. And I worked, also, we had a very cool video for our crowdfunding campaign, which also helped. I had this idea of having almost like a music video for our crowdfunding campaign. And when I showed the video to a few people, they were pretty confident that the campaign was going to do well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and sort of things, started to click more. Things started to get in shape with the whole brand, and that's when I was gaining confidence. It wasn't so much about the success of crowdfunding. I was happy that I was able to create this style with the brand.
Sure.
For example, the website, the fonts, and even when I was working on the video, when you work on early projects with your brand, it helps you learn more help more with brand identity.
Totally.
So I had these requirements for the video, and it just made sense. And when the video was made, a lot of people thought it was really in line with the brand, in line with the style. It was very musical, and a lot of people loved it.
That's awesome.
Kind of a unique video, not just a person standing behind a camera and explaining what the product is. It's very engaging, colorful, musical, and
yeah, matches the brand, right? Like we talked about kind of earlier. I love that.
Yeah, so
That's
that's
great.
when I gained more confidence and decided to go full time with crowdfunding.
Okay.
Once we throw it out, it was around February 2016, last year,
Yeah.
that we decided to launch. And we also had a pool of people signing up for the brand, for the product.
Sure.
So we sent out this email blast, and uh, we got orders the first day.
That's awesome.
And the second or third day, we got featured on GeekWire article, and fifth or sixth day on Tree Hugger, and it was great to see a boost in our traffic, to see comments, to see sales. It was, again, gaining confidence and gaining feedback is great. And one of the beauties of crowdfunding is it's sort of a market research phase. It just answers a lot of questions for you.
Totally. That's
I
great.
experience with crowdfunding. I just think it's awesome. It's a lot more than just raising capital.
Totally.
It's a lot more than that, and it did all of that for us. And I'm glad to use a crowdfunding campaign to get the word out there and collect sales, obviously.
Sure. And so you're kind of ramping up to do it again, and you're
Right.
making a new version, like a 1.5. Do you maybe want to kind of cover what's different between the first version compared to this new version that you're coming out with?
Absolutely. We are definitely working on the new bike,
Sure.
and we have a product stage. We have this timeline at this point, so that we actually put a limit on the first one.
Okay.
We sort of treated it as a version 1.0,
Got you.
and wanted to uh, deliver the bikes, and we were very proud to deliver them on time. We
That's
promised
awesome.
early July, and we literally shipped them out at the same time, and customers received them. We've received great feedback on our bike, which also motivates us a lot to continue. But another great thing about crowdfunding is sort of this segmental phase. It's not I guess you could continue selling on crowdfunding, but it's sort of a deadline. It's a segmental, so it's kind of a round one, round two, which worked out perfect for Propella. And we delivered the bikes. We've collected some feedback, and now decide to come back with a product that's a lot better,
Sure.
a lot of improvements. We use the analogy of iPhone 6s versus 6 a lot.
Sure.
Kind of
That's great.
collecting facts helped us a lot to focus on parts. The major point is a lot of updates in the battery,
Okay.
a lot of updates in the bike components, and like I mentioned, it's more of a customer feedback blended in with our opinions to make it a very practical and beautiful and affordable bike
Sure.
that we're really proud to announce.
Sure. So what's going to be the cost?
The cost will actually be very close to the first one.
Okay.
We are keeping the cost very low. We are one of the most affordable electric bikes, and again, due to the simplicity and minimalist side of it, we focus on a few good components as opposed to a ton of components on the bike. So that helps us bring the price down. Also, being consumer direct helps us lower the price.
Sure.
We are still working on the final MSRP of the bike, but a crowdfunding phase, there's definitely there should be a reward to early backers, and it's very likely that we start around the same price, around $799.
Okay.
For early backers.
Great. Well, Ben, we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close the show again with mentioning where people can get more information and sign up for the newsletter, so they can sign up, so when the crowdfunding thing does go live, that they can get notified.
Absolutely. Our website is propellabikes.com.
Okay.
On the website, we have an email list that is purely used for announcing the launch date of Propella 1.5.
Okay.
Either on the launch date or before, we will send out an email to all the signups and to notify them about the early and limited quantity discount, the $7.99. It's sort of a first come, first serve,
Sure.
and then it will jump into regular price. So that's where you find the email, propellabikes.com. And you can also learn about the first round, Propeller 1.0, on Indiegogo, or simply through Google, or any of our social media sites. You can also reach our social media sites from the website.
Sure.
There's a link that you can see our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, propellabikes.com.
Yeah, and I do recommend going to the gallery section and checking out the photos, because the bike looks incredible, and I love the design of it. So, Ben, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and hopefully we can do another one again around the time that the crowdfunding campaign goes live.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on your show, and appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, man. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
You too.
Bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.